Hi again. It is so great to see you all back this afternoon. Did you have a good lunch? Yeah, right? Nothing like Chick-fil-A to, hopefully the tryptophan from the chicken doesn't kick in this afternoon and the cookie and the chips and everything. So, and again, I just want to thank our wonderful worship team for another great, inspiring worship set. And again, it is so wonderful to see you. And I think before I get started talking about partnership, I think I need to give you an update from my talk in February where I talked about horseback riding. And I have to give a little context for this. So for those of you that weren't here, I shared a story of when I was about 10 years old, my good friend, and I use that in air quotes, good friend, decided that the first time I should ride a horse should be on a retired racehorse named Tarzan. And she's like, yeah, just get on him. He's really nice. Just hop on up. It'll be fine. So the short story is I got on this racehorse. I had some kind of equipment on, like minimal equipment. And it was a little bit terrifying, and it was not a great experience. And I use that to illustrate what you should not do and what it's like to be ill-equipped to do something. However, my mom saw that talk, and she wanted me to talk to you all today. And I got a call from my mom, and she said, and my brother-in-law's in the back, so Norman, see if I get this correct. And she said, Tracey? Now, I didn't get a Tracey Ann, so it wasn't that bad, but it was a Tracey. And I said, hi, Mom, what's going on? She said, well, I watched your talk. You did a really nice job. I'm very proud of you. However, I think you need to tell the people that you may have given the impression that I condoned your behavior when you were out riding a horse. And she kind of wanted me to share with you that she neither approved nor condoned that activity of me riding the racehorse. And she also wanted me to let you know that she was shocked and appalled that I made such a reckless decision. But keep in mind, this is about 40 years ago. So, but I love my mom and I respect my mom and I wanted to do what she asked. So I'm on her behalf letting you know that she had nothing to do with that experience. And Mom, when you watch this, I love you and I work to rectify the situation. So I wanted to share that because I think she was really worried that you thought she dropped me off knowingly, that I was going to get on a racehorse. So anyway, I survived that situation, obviously. I'm here. I live to tell about it. And but the story doesn't even end there because, no joke, about a week or so after our tea in February, and I shared that story with you, I got a phone call from my sweet granddaughter, B. She's 6 years old, and she has the sweetest little voice, and she called me, and she said, Mimi, guess what? And I said, what, sweet girl? What do you want to tell Mimi? And she said, Mimi, you are never going to believe it. I'm going to take horseback riding lessons. So our Lord and Savior is wonderful and powerful, and he has a wonderful sense of humor. Because here's a picture of my sweet granddaughter, B. I know you can't see her head a little bit, but that's sweet granddaughter, B. And that she's on this horse. And I just also want to point out there is an adult in the picture. Please note the boots. You can't see the helmet. Mimi took her shopping before she went horseback riding to make sure that she had every piece of equipment possible that she would need. I was like, do you have a flak jacket or something that covers her middle? I don't know anything about horseback riding. Do you have something like that she can wear? And they're like, not for this kind of riding. And I'm like, okay, what, can you tell me about this helmet? And my friends are laughing over here because they will tell you I am a seeker of knowledge almost to an annoying degree. And I was asking this poor guy at Stablemates 100 questions, and he's like, yeah, this is just a really good helmet for a beginner. And I'm like, yeah, but does it? But anyway, I was not going to repeat any generational mistakes. So the long story is that, she is taking horseback riding lessons. This horse is actually 16 hands. I'm learning what hands are. So it's a pretty big horse. But she loves it, and she is not repeating the mistakes of her Mimi. So that's a good thing. And this story actually is a really great introduction to what I want to talk to you about today. This picture, really points out a couple of things. And Again, I want to go back to standing next to her, and I know you can't see it because we're always like trying to protect privacy and stuff, but is her instructor, who's an experienced horsewoman. And she is guiding her through this process, this whole process of learning to ride. And it is a process, unlike me, who like jumped up on a horse and took off. There's actually a process of learning how to ride. And she's doing it the right way. And it includes a lot of things that, I didn't obviously learn when I got on the back of a horse, which is like how to put the tack in the horse's mouth. And I do know what tack is. I learned that. To put the tack in the horse's mouth, how to put on the saddle, how to sit properly, like she's sitting a certain way, she's sitting properly, and all of those things that are needed for her to be successful. And the word here is successful in riding, again, unlike her Mimi. And all of this is done under this watchful eye of an instructor who's there with her, who's there to help her. And it got me thinking about, we're all learning and growing and learning new things on our life's journey. And whether it's learning something new like riding a horse, or more importantly, whether it's our spiritual growth, having a partner, someone who's experienced, who's next to us, is vitally important. The older I get, the more I'm convinced of that. It is vitally important to have someone next to you. And like this experienced horsewoman with my granddaughter, we need to have those experienced women in our lives who can help us as well. So exactly what do I mean by that? Well, you probably have a friend group, or maybe there's a group that you like work out with or have a hobby with, run with. Maybe you have friends at work that you socialize with. Maybe you have friends from childhood. I have a group of friends. We have been friends for 50 years, since kindergarten, and we all still stay in touch. I love that group. Maybe you have Facebook friends, because, you can keep in touch with people really anywhere. Or you may even have a friend group like this, a posse. Right? Maybe you roll like T-Swift with a posse. I don't know. But all of these groups are important. And I want to kind of, acknowledge that we do need friend groups. We do need people to do things with and hang out with. But what I think we really need is having someone, or even a small group of Christian partners who can help us ground ourselves spiritually and help us as we become equipped for God's purpose. These are people who aren't just part of our social circle, but are those true spiritual partners. And these are the people about whom the following verse is true. There's a little verse. It comes from Ecclesiastes 4, and it says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor. If either one of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep them warm. They'll keep each other warm. So oftentimes we hear these verses in the context of like marriage and weddings and things like that. And I definitely see that connection. However, I also see this as really important when we talk about these friends, and I'm going to use like friendship, partnership, mentorship kind of collectively, because it may take on different forms as you think about what I'm sharing today. But what I love about these verses is there's almost like an element of survival in this, right? That these relationships are necessary for survival. Because it talks about this talks about like physical survival in a way, but it's really spiritual survival. It's both. And, having someone to help you up when you fall down spiritually, that's important, right? Because we have those like dips in our lives where we're just, and I think I've shared a little bit with you, but like I had a year last year that was like, Henry Nouwen calls it the dark night of the spirit. And I was like, what? But I had my spiritual posse with me who was helping me along with that. So it didn't feel like I stayed down, because we're going to fall down, but we have these people who help us not stay down. And the idea that when we work together, we get a better return, right? When we're working shoulder to shoulder with someone, when we're, when we're looking for our purpose, or we're equipped for our purpose, and we're all working together, and you have those spiritual friends, partners, mentors that are working with you, the work is better, and it gets done in a different and better way, and it yields a better return. And, when you think about keeping warm, right? Like, think about like when you get really, really cold, and then you walk in, like you put a jacket on, or you walk into a warm space, or you stand by a fire. And I think that we can feel emotionally and spiritually cold, and those mentors, friends, those spiritual partners can warm us up physically. They can pour things into us that bring us back to life, so to speak. And the Bible is clear that this is not a journey we are to do in isolation. Like, our spiritual journey is meant to be shared. You know, we've been talking about this all weekend, right? That collectiveness, whether it's in this setting, whether it's in a small group. We're going to talk about ways to connect in a little bit later before we leave today. But we should be in partnership with each other. Now, again, I'm going to go back. Like, I know, I hear you introverts, I do. And the older I get, the more of an introvert I become. You know, I like my fireplace, I like my Bomba slippers, and I like my chair. Like, that's my default. But truly, we are meant, like, you know, God, like, think about, you know, Pastor Randy's been talking about, like, God created man and woman together. He created partnership. Like, we are meant to be together in partnership. And this journey is not meant to be done alone. So let me ask you this. Let me just take a quick poll and collect some data here. And I want you to think about this. Do you think, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, do you think you need a friend, a mentor, a partner to walk the spiritual journey with you? Do you think you need that? Like, is that something you think you need? Yes? Yeah. Like, I know I do. Like, my people keep me, like I said, on track and moving forward in ways that I can't even express. And I figured that many of you would raise your hand and say that. And again, for introverts, this may not be at the top of your list to do it in a big group, but I think the idea of what we read in Ecclesiastes really makes sense, right? Like, wouldn't you love to be in mentorship, partnership, and friendship like what's described here? Even if we don't, excuse me, like a big group, this sounds really comforting, doesn't it? And so I'd like to then kind of move into, so like, why is it important? I've kind of described, like, this is what it is, this is what we should be thinking about, but like, then why is it so important that we think about this? And I think, actually, I'm going to use the word vital. I think it's vital that we have these types of partnerships. I don't think it's a nice to do. I think, as we say, it's not a nice to do, it's a must do. And the reason I think that is because we have at times, at least, and I assume, maybe not everybody, but feels, I'm going to use this term, spiritually untethered, okay? What I mean by that is times where we feel like, I don't know what's going on, I don't feel connected in, I don't feel connected into church, I don't feel connected in over here, I'm not sure of my purpose, my faith feels weak, I don't know what to do in this situation, I feel like I'm spiritually afloat and I don't have anything to tie on to. I'm untethered, my spiritual life just feels like it's in a swirl. And sometimes, in those moments, one of the things we need is just someone to listen, to pour that out. You know, we were journaling, right? And I heard a lot of people say, I didn't know I could journal like this. I'm just pouring stuff out, right? And sometimes we need to be able to speak it aloud to someone else. Sometimes all those things that are inside of us need to come out to somebody in a real way. Like, you know, Pastor Kim said, like, we're real women. Like, this is all, we talked about authentic last year. Like, this is not just like, you know, hey, praise the Lord, high five. This is real. And like Pastor Kim said earlier, we're getting real. And sometimes we have things that, like I said, need to come out. And we need someone to listen. And I saw that, and we see it, I think, in a lot of ways. When you're in a small group, like last night we were in our small group, you connect right away and you start to share things. That's how we're designed, right? We talked about this last night. We're designed to be like this, to share, to, you know, reach out to someone else, to kind of talk about what's on your mind. And having someone, and I think this is the difference between just like the groups I talked about at the beginning and what I'm kind of moving into now, is having someone or a small group who knows us, that's the first thing, who knows us, but most importantly knows Christ, that can support us and walk alongside of us and guide us, just like the person in Ecclesiastes, is vital. Like, we need that. There's too much happening right now in the world that it's so easy to become untethered spiritually, that we need to be grounded and we need to have those people that help us do it, and we don't have to try to do it by ourselves because it's too hard. It is absolutely hard to continue in our spiritual journey without that tethering and without that grounding. So I'm not full of questions today. I have another question. Does anybody in here do yoga, like holy yoga, or you tried? Anybody in here do yoga? As I age, I'm finding that I need to work on my core and my balance because I have a little baby granddaughter, Cameron, who is 4 months old. and I have to like sometimes get up from the floor holding her, which at 57 is a little bit different than at 27, might I add. And so once a week, my friend Paul and I would take a yoga class. And I love my yoga class. We love our instructor. I sleep really well the nights I take yoga, by the way. I'm just kind of like, because I have two favorite moves. My first favorite move is Shavasana, which if you don't take yoga is basically you sleep the last 5 minutes. That's my favorite part. Like one night, our yoga instructor said, does anybody mind if we go into Shavasana early? Yeah, no, go ahead. Like, let me adjust my, I bring a little blanket, let me get my blanket under my head. I'll be out in 30 seconds. So I love Shavasana. That's my favorite, where you basically sleep. But my second favorite pose is mountain pose. And here's why I love mountain pose. Mountain pose, and I'm going to demonstrate a little bit for you, is where you put your feet like about distance apart from your shoulders, and you spend some time like really grounding your feet into whatever is below you, the floor. And you ground, and then once you do that, then you do your balancing. Then you try the moves that are harder to do. And it's really funny because it's like, I'm like, I'm grounded. I'm like, when I lift up a foot, you know what I mean? But mountain pose, it grounds you. And you have to have your feet firmly planted and find your balance before you try the harder things. And a good Christian friend, mentor, partner, is the person who helps you find your spiritual mountain pose. They're the ones that help ground you so you can try those harder spiritual moves in life. They give you that firm foundation. They help give you that firm foundation to be able to do that. So that brings me to my first point that I like to make today. Like, wow, it took you a long time to get to your first point, but I'm actually at my first point. The first point is this. Our ability to be equipped is greatly enhanced by a Christian friend or mentor. Like the experienced horsewoman that I mentioned, or like mountain pose, these people guide us and ground us in our faith, and we need them on our journey through life. And in order for us to flourish where God is leading us and planting us, and in order for us to become equipped for his purpose so that we can carry it out, we need to be grounded with those who can help us, who can walk alongside of us, who can keep us warm, and who can pick us back up when we fall. And again, it's really important that they be Christian friends, mentors, partners. Because the Bible's pretty clear about why they need to be Christian friends, mentor, and partners. And it's this. It's 2 Corinthians 6:14, and it says, don't be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? And that really struck me because, again, this is typically a verse that we hear, sometimes relating to marriage and things like that. Not to be unequally yoked in a marriage. But I think this is true for friendships, partnerships, and mentors. Let me just hit pause, though. I'm not saying that you can be friends with people that aren't Christians. I'm not saying that. I don't want to give you that impression. But what I am saying is those close partnerships, those people that are ecclesiastical, how about that word? Ecclesiastical, like we looked at. Those people that are helping us become who God wants us to be need to be believers. All right, I got maybe one or two more horse stories in there, but I learned about draft horses, okay? Draft horses are humongous. They're really, I don't know if you, they're like the Clydesdales, they're like draft horses, they're big. And when I drive home from work, I take some back roads through Carroll County and Frederick County to get home from the college. It's a beautiful drive. And there's an Amish farm where and I think he's maybe like 12 or 14 years old, is driving this set of draft horses that are just humongous. And I have to slow down because I'm always gawking. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's fascinating. They're like, this kid is driving, they're plodding away, they're plowing the fields. And it occurred to me once, and this, I think, in the Bible they talk about oxen, but these are these powerful creatures yoked together. What if they weren't in sync? What if they took off in opposite directions, right? What a catastrophe that would be. And I think that's the idea of being, not yoked with unbelievers, is that, we are set to accomplish a purpose. And if we have people in our lives who are strong enough to pull us away from that purpose, like the draft horses that would be going in different directions, the field wouldn't get plowed, and for us, we're not going to accomplish what God has set out for us to do if we're being pulled in the wrong direction. And that is really easy to have happen. It is so easy to get distracted and pulled off the task that God has set out for us. And so, in short, I guess, unbelievers can pull us away from our purpose. And like I said, I'm not saying you don't have friends. I'm just talking about that core group of people that are really, whether it's one or whether it's a group, guiding you and helping you to really follow your purpose. That core group must be a group of believers. They're the people that, I would say, they're the voices that when they pour into us, they need to be the voices of wise, godly counsel. That's what we need to hear. We need to hear that wise, godly counsel. And I think there's an opportunity for you to think more about that and journal about that during the journaling time, but tuck that away, that the voices of wise, godly counsel. So we've unpacked this idea of spiritual partners and mentors and friends and the purpose of them and why that's important. So then I guess the next question is like, so who are they? Right? Because you might be sitting there thinking, you're like, that sounds great, Tracey. I don't have anyone in my life like that. Like, I literally am journeying alone. Like I am. I'm journeying alone. I don't have anybody like that. And I would say, well, one thing I would say, today you're not journeying alone. Today you're not. Look around you. Today you're journeying, right? Like, these are your people. Like, I don't think this posse would fit in one picture, like the T-Swift's posse, but really, like, these are your people. And I would also say that you are never alone because your Heavenly Father is always on your side and always in your corner. And as Annette talked about earlier, you can knock, He's going to hear you. He knows what you need. If you need someone in your life, He knows that already. And you can ask Him, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So you are not journeying alone. And as we've said all throughout the weekend, the purpose of this women's ministry is to connect you with people, to create the conditions to meet people, to connect in, to find friends, to hear from different people, hear different perspectives of what Christian women think, feel, and do when they're together, right? And those female partnerships that are friendships and mentorships. When we come to events like this, you may come in, like some of you belong to like a real table and you're already with a group and you can solidify those groups. But for those of you that maybe are looking for connection, these are again the opportunities, and I think I touched on this on Friday night. We do several events throughout the year and they're different because different people connect in different ways. And again, we're hoping that you can maybe make some new friendships and meet some people that can become those partners and mentors, because we want you to feel connected with other women of faith. So my second point for today then is, not only do we need those individual mentors and partners, but we need to be with each other in this collective partnership, because that's how those first relationships grow from the collective, right, when we come together. And I think, this is my humble opinion, I think that we need to have, it's great to have maybe like a one-on-one mentor, someone that helps you along, and I think we also need groups of people to share our experiences and our lessons with each other, and opportunities to support and lift each other. But I think, again, there needs to almost be layers. And if you think about athletes, this is like the analogy that I came up with. Think about how athletes equip themselves, right? So let's think about football players. Football players don't just wear a helmet, right? They wear shoulder pads, they have knee pads, they have hip pads, they have cleats. They have multiple layers of protection that they wear. They don't just rely on that one piece of equipment to protect them. Likewise, we need to have multiple support systems in place as well when it comes to this idea of friendships, partnerships and mentorships. We have to have like that personal level, because sometimes you just need like one person to hear you, and you might only, and this is the other thing I would say, sometimes maybe you only have the energy for one person, if that makes sense. Like a group seems a little bit daunting. But then there's also times where you do need to be in that collective partnership, because you're going to learn and grow from listening to other women and hearing about their journey. I always say this, I said this last night, but it's amazing how quickly we connect in when we come together as women. I mean, within 5 minutes, we're worshiping, we're laughing, we're praying, we're crying, right? And sometimes all those things at once. But we do, and we're like hugging each other, and Pastor Kim talked about hugging and smiling, and we're like, hi, how are you? And we're greeting each other, and it's just such a wonderful environment, and it's powerful, and it's uplifting. We always leave events like this feeling like, wow, this is just what I needed, sometimes, but it's because we're spending time with a group of Jesus-loving women, and that is just such a cool thing. And it really, I think, happens because Proverbs 27:17 comes to life when we come together. And it says this: as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Right? We are here to sharpen each other spiritually. And sometimes it's like Pastor Kim said, it's to hear a truth that maybe God wants us to hear, but we don't necessarily want to hear it. But that's how iron sharpens iron. And sometimes, I don't know if you've had this experience or not, but maybe you have someone in your life and they can say something to you that nobody else can say to you, and you'll hear it. A different person says it, you're like, you're crazy. The other person says it, you're like, oh my gosh, you're right. I just want to say that this happens this is completely off topic, but this happens in my family. Because I'll say something to my daughter, and she's like, yeah, no. And her father says it. She's like, Daddy, you're so smart. Can you tell I'm a little bitter about that? But anyway, back to iron sharpening iron. But, sometimes you have that person, and that's a gift from God. To have someone that can speak into your life and speak truth to you, and that you can hear. And that takes some time to build that. Like, that just doesn't happen overnight. But it's really important that we have those people that can speak to us and tell us and hold up that mirror sometimes to help us to be the women that God's called us to be. And that's a gift. And it sometimes takes a little bit of work to get there, and we'll talk about this. So really, I think the bottom line is that God does not intend us, and I've said this a couple of times, God doesn't intend us to journey alone. I got another horse story in me. But I think this is important, and there's a couple of points I want to make. So, Beatrix, my granddaughter, she's, learning that riding a horse is hard. It's not easy. I thought it was hard for a different reason. She's learning that it's hard because it's a process. It was hard for me because I didn't have a process. The process can be hard too. And it's the preparation part that can be a little frustrating for her. Because she's like, great, we're just going to ride horses. And it's like, no, there's all these things you have to do before and after. And they make them, where she goes, they make them do all of the things. They don't just say, great, hop on the horse, and then we'll take care of the rest. They make the students do all of the things that they need to do to care for the horse. And one of her first lessons, her instructor told her to go ahead and put her saddle away. And like I said, Beatrix is kind of tall, but she's tiny, she's petite. And she was having a really hard time lifting up her saddle. And she started to get a little teary-eyed because she was getting frustrated. And the cool thing was her instructor came over and did not lift the saddle for her, lifted the saddle with her, and said, we will do this together, and I will help you lift it, but I'm not going to lift it for you. And this is like a little bit of a cautionary tale. When we're talking about these partnerships, friendships, and mentorships, we are not talking about dumping our stuff onto someone else and expecting them to carry it. Okay, that's not what Ecclesiastes says, right? It talks about doing all of it together. And that can be a little bit of a slippery slope that we have to kind of, I always like to say, set a healthy boundary about. Because we are not here to be dumped on, like, and again, I'm just a little bit off tap. And and I love my daughter. I love my daughter. She's amazing. But she was a teenager, and my friend Jamie's here, and we talked about this with our daughters. When they were kind of in their late teens and early 20s, they'd be having a bad day, and they'd call us and be like, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and they'd hang up the phone and feel great, and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't move. I'm so distraught about this, I can't move. They felt great. Right? So that's not the balance we're talking about. Now, mothers and daughters do that because that's what you do for your daughter, and I was always happy to talk to her. But in these partnerships, friendships, and mentorships that I'm talking about, that's not the way that they're there to operate. They're really to be, how do you lift together? How do you walk together? How do you, to make that workload lighter? That's what we're talking about. And I think that's that ultimate concept that, experienced spirit, when we come into this experience with other spiritual partners, mentors, and friends, that we do the work together and that we help each other on the journey, and it's not a one-sided relationship. So I have an example. We have a little video that we like to share with you today of two women here at FCF who found this beautiful friendship, partnership, mentorship experience. And they're going to introduce themselves and everything in the video, so I'm not going to do that other than to say, this is something that is really great and wonderful, and it's not like we're saying everybody has to go out and do this. We're showing an example of something that is really cool that you can experience, but I'm just going to go ahead and roll the video, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more.
I had just become a mom. I was still newly-ish married, so I really wanted a godly woman who could share wisdom with me on marriage and being a mom, but also just the everyday struggles we go through in life. And it was really important that she had a Christ-like perspective to me, because not all women in my life at the time had that, so I really wanted someone who could share that godly wisdom with me that I was looking for.
I especially wanted to be a mentor to someone, a sister in Christ that's younger than me, because I had experience from my work life in doing that professionally, in encouraging people to grow professionally and personally. And while once in a while I could bring a spiritual aspect into it, it's very different. And another big thing is I had fabulous women who mentored me, and I wanted to pass that on. So whenever we can, we kind of had a journey. We kind of started trying to do like every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And initially when we first connected and talked, we determined, number one, we both are pretty laid back. And also we knew that it wasn't going to be a structured every blah, 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 because that wasn't going to work for her life or my life. And so we've evolved into probably about once a month, every 3 to 4 weeks has worked. There have been periods where we've done phone calls and periods where we've met. Sometimes we walk, sometimes we go to Dunkin', get a coffee, donut, whatever. So we're really flexible about that. And
what don't we talk about? We have talked about everything from marriage and raising children to our favorite movies to deeper things like doing biblical studies on anger and forgiveness, two things that I was struggling with that I came to Deborah about, and she really helped me and guided me through that, and the studies that she brought to me have been amazing, and I just learned so much from it. We've talked about just about every aspect of my life. She's helped me with different struggles I've had with family problems and just navigating how to live a life in a God-honoring way.
It's really kind of a beautiful thing. I have watched her grow. When we do something that we feel God has called us to, equipped us to do, I think that even for me has encouraged me, has helped me to grow. Just helping her grow helps me grow, because sometimes there's something she's dealing with in her life, and I'm like, it like helps check me in some areas. So, and I'll like recognize something, oh, I need to pay attention to that too. So it's helped me grow as well. And just the relationship itself is just beautiful is the word that comes to mind, and encouraging.
Deborah's been someone who has been there for me through really hard times. She was there helping me navigate through a relationship with my father that was broken, and was there when he passed away. She was there for me during a miscarriage. She was there for me through so many things, and I'm just so grateful for the wisdom she's given me, the godly perspective that she has, that she shares. She does keep me in check when I'm needing it, and I'm really grateful for that. I couldn't imagine going through some of the things I've gone through in the last couple of years without Deborah, and I look forward to learning so much more from her and growing more through this relationship, and yeah, I'm just really grateful.
That is such a beautiful example of what I mean, the video says it way better, shows it way better than I could ever say. That's exactly what we're talking about. You heard a lot of the things in there. It really lives out the verses that I shared. And, it's our hope. We've been talking about this in women's ministry. We are really trying to figure out how we can start connecting some people. We haven't quite come up. I know we're going over at Pastor Kim because we have talked about it and we're thinking about it. But we're hoping that this is something that would, maybe inspire you to think about mentoring or seeking someone to mentor you, because you can just see what a beautiful God-centered experience it is for both of them. And both of them talked about how they helped each other. It's, again, that verse from Ecclesiastes, right? So I just thank both Deborah and Deanna for being willing partners to make that video so we could share that with you today, because, again, the video says it way better than I ever could. It also brings me to the next point, which is that we can, like they did, we can build a spiritual posse. And so what exactly is a posse? Well, it has both, that word has both positive and negative connotations, but I like this definition, where it says a group of people who have a common characteristic, occupation, or purpose. So I really, really like that. So just really quickly here to close things out, I want to talk about what that could look like. I like to call it Posse Building 101. So if you're thinking about I love that video and I want to, find something like that, or I want to be part of something like that, how do I get started in doing that? And so let's talk about that. Posse Building 101. First is, and it goes back to what Annette shared with us earlier about knocking on the door, asking you shall receive. God knows our needs before we even go to him in prayer. We do need to pray. This is something I think that requires prayer, to ask God to bring into our lives those people that are Christian mentors, friends, and partners, so that the right people come into our lives, so that we, again, are equally yoked and moving forward in the same direction in finding our purpose and working in our purpose. The next thing I would say, though, is when we're praying, there needs to be a little bit of evaluation in this process as well. And I think you have to evaluate maybe who's coming into your life and maybe even your current groups. And think about that verse of iron sharpening iron. And are there people in your life who are distracting you and making you spiritually dull rather than sharp? And think about that and think about what that might mean. I'm not saying just cut people out of your life. I'm saying you really need to evaluate that and, again, pray about that, because you want to make sure that you're moving in that right direction. The next thing I would say is go where the people are. So attending things like women's events, participating in small groups, serving here at church, they all lead to powerful connections. People come to serve and they say, I'm here to serve because I want to serve the church, but I also want to meet people. I want to meet, Christian women, and I want to connect in, and I want to find, some folks like, Deborah and Deanna who are willing to, be that friend, partner, or mentor. And finally, maybe you need to be. And maybe you need to be that for someone else. Maybe you need to be that partner, mentor, friend, because all of us have spiritual gifts that we can share. And others would appreciate that. And I think that getting, in that right God-centered partnership, friendship, mentorship relationship is really, really important. So think about that. So pray, evaluate, go, and be. I like to close out this afternoon with a story that really brings all of this together in an especially appropriate way for today. And it's about the founding of our women's ministry, and it has its roots in just what I'm talking about. In 1994, Pastor Kim went away to a women's retreat, and she had been working at FCF for 2 years but was not yet a pastor. And the church itself was only 3 years old, with about 200 or so people attending at that time. And on the last night of the retreat, she felt that God had strongly impressed upon her to start a women's ministry at the then fledgling FCF. And one of the things she had clearly learned through her involvement with the women's retreat was that ministry is a team effort, and that is completely true. Like, it takes a big village to do women's ministry. And it's never a solo act, right? And we talked about that, like that partnership. So that same night she prayed, right, and asked God who she was to partner with in starting a women's ministry. And he answered her immediately by putting someone's face in her head, and it was Debbie McCrory. So Debbie, if you know Debbie, she is currently the director of marriage and early childhood here at FCF. But at the time, she and her husband were new to FCF. And she and Kim knew each other, but not very well. And Debbie was a new mom with a little baby boy. And she had been a teacher, but had then become a stay-at-home mom, and was at a kind of big transition point in her life. And Debbie had begun praying and asking God to bring a Christian friend into her life. And she had assumed it would be another mom with young kids. However, God always has different plans for us, right? We talked about that. Like, pray, what did Annette say? Like, pray, and then let God show you the way. So Kim eventually shows up on Debbie McCrory's doorstep to inform Debbie that God has told her that the two of them are supposed to start a women's ministry. So through God's answer to both of their prayers, completely separate, right, from each other, an unlikely partnership and friendship formed, one that has lasted for 30 years. And through this God-ordained partnership, the FCF women's ministry was birthed. So again, that partnership, that's where we come from. That's our roots in the women's ministry. Because God is all about equipping us with partnership for his purpose. And I think this verse really says it well. We're all co-workers in God's service, right? And so that idea of partnership, friendship, and mentorship is just so important. And I just want to say I am so grateful for this weekend and for all of you. I can't tell you how much I love just seeing you here, talking to you, meeting you, watching you worship, watching you journal, watching you pray, watching you connect in small groups. It's just such a joy. And I just know that, I hope, and I do know that you were able to connect with God, with other women, and this collective force of us who are committed to serving God and finding our purpose.